Welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Eugene Chan. Our guest tonight is Mr. Paul Chan, our Financial Secretary. He was on the show at the end of July last year, talking about the first lot of consumption vouchers. Tonight, Mr. Chan has kindly agreed to be with us again to answer some questions about his recent budget. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, Eugene. Good to see you.
Right. We have always been told that the government needs to save its surpluses for rainy day. And I'm sure we all agree that day has come. And this fifth wave is actually, in my opinion, qualified for Typhoon Signal number 10. It's a really huge one. So I guess this is the reason why your expenditure in the budget is $807 billion, which is $100 billion more than last year, and almost as high as the record one of $820.4 billion in 2020 and 21. All this has included your $170 billion of your anti-pandemic spending. At the end of this, we're expecting a deficit of $56 billion, which is equal to 1.95% of our GDP. I mean, yes. It is a lot less than the deficit of $257 billion in 2020 and 21, but it's still a lot of money. Can we afford it? And how much is still left in our reserve? Because we have been spending a lot of money in the last few years, and many viewers have showed their concern to me.
Well, actually, this amount is slightly less than 2% of our GDP, which is very affordable. And at the end of March this year, we are going to have a fiscal reserve of about $940 billion. And also considering the hardship experienced by our people and the SMEs, given the epidemic situation, I think we do need to adopt an expansionary fiscal stance to sustain the economy and provide the much needed relief to the people and the SMEs.
Right. You were expecting a deficit last year, but we end up have a reporting of a surplus of $18.9 billion. But some say that you have included the proceeds from the government bonds and movement of funds as a revenue. Some say it's distorting the picture. Do you agree?
Oh, not at all. It is only because the government's account is prepared on the cash basis. And we have set out the proceeds from issuance of bonds. We have set out the amount bringing back from the housing reserve, as well as the accrued income of the future fund in the accounts. So it is very transparent.
Right. So, FS, do you think your projected deficit for this year might turn into a surplus again so that we can be even happier?
Well, there are a lot of uncertainties, both externally and domestically. So we have to remain vigilant. Domestically, very much depend on the epidemic situation, how fast this can be put under control, and the economy to be revived. And how quick we can revive our traveling with the mainland on quarantine-free basis, as well as restarting the international traveling. And externally, the inflation in the developed economies, and as a consequence, the monetary policy of the U.S. Federal Reserve, as well as European central banks, will have a lot of impact on global fund flow and financial market volatility. And the recent geopolitical situation is also alarming, so we have to be very careful.
Yeah, so Paul, I'm sure your budget wants to help those people who are mostly in need, but we know that with the lingering pandemic situation, the ones who are most affected are on the lower economic ladder. That means those with lesser savings, and they require their physical presence at the work. That means they can't really work from home. So can you explain this budget? Have you favored, if at all, these people instead of those people which is less affected, because we want to put in the medicine right at the center of the disease?
Well, after the outbreak of this wave of epidemic, the government has launched 2 rounds of anti-epidemic fund. And among the measures, there is a $10,000 payment to those unemployed. And in this particular budget, apart from offering tax breaks, raise reliefs, paying an extra half month of CSSA, things like that, we launched a consumption voucher scheme to the order of $10,000 each. And the first tranche is to be paid in April. which is meant to be relieving the hardship, particularly to those in the grassroots.
Right. So you think the budget will be directed for those who are most in need?
We do our best, and we will continue to monitor the situation.
You know, when you're doing a budget, I'm sure you have to weigh one hand to another. It must be a very hard sort of balancing act. I mean, in the past budget, can you share with the viewer, what is the most difficult decision you have to make to create this budget?
Well, for this budget, on the one hand, we need to provide sufficient resources to support an all-out effort to fight the epidemic, because this is first and foremost. It is important for the health and safety of our people, and it is the basis upon which the economy can be revived.
Right.
And we have to be sensitive to the needs of our people at the SMEs to provide them with support. But at the same time, we cannot afford to lose sight of our bigger picture, as well as the medium to long-term development. That's why, apart from the various measures to support SMEs and our people, we have set aside substantial resources to develop our innovation and technology sector, to increase our capacity in land supply, in improving transport infrastructure, in order to enable us in the medium to long term to sustain growth.
Right. At the end of the day, what will be your own key performance indicator, your KPI, that you have done a good budget?
Well, it is important for the people of Hong Kong to keep their confidence at these very trying times, and at the same time remain well equipped to continue to grow our economy and to improve on the various fronts of the society.
Right. So, Financial Secretary, let's move on to some of the work that you've done on the pandemic-related initiatives. You've just mentioned one of your major ones is the 10,000 consumption vouchers, which is welcomed by many. It was quite well received last year, but there were some hiccups in the beginning, as we all recalled. What has the government learned from that, and what have you done to address this time, making sure we don't have the hiccups when you launch it in April?
Well, the slight hiccup last September was among the elderly, and that particular problem was overcome within days. For this round of voucher, the first tranche is to be paid in April, and given its wide scope of application, I think it would be a welcome relief, particularly for people who have been suffering during this particular time. And we will open it up for additional store value operators to compete for offering service, so that we can provide much more choices for the people of Hong Kong, and through their competition to add value to these vouchers.
Right. You know, Mrs. Virginia Yip has commented that we should have more flexibility to hand out actually more cash handout so that people can use it for rent, because people can't get, for those who can't get income. What do you say to that?
Well, given the very wide coverage, I mean the scope of this voucher, actually people can use it to buy their daily necessities, to use it for transportation, to buy anti-epidemic materials. So I think it is as good as cash.
Right. And also, Ms. Starry Lee, also, I'm going to bring out all the political leaders' comments, and she was saying that, have you thought of extending the validity from 6 to 9 months on delivery when the pandemic situation is more controlled, so people can actually spend it? What do you say to that as well?
Well, the first tranche to be paid in April will be given a very long period for people to spend. We are going to announce the details shortly, but the idea is to give people the flexibility. So for those who want to spend it earlier, they can. For those who want to use it on a more continuous basis to meet their needs, they can also do so.
Right, Paul, another key initiative in your budget is that to ban the landlords from terminating the tenancy or even taking relevant legal actions for them the tenant who can't pay rent. Is this driving Hong Kong away from free economy, as some has claimed?
Oh, not at all. This is aiming at providing a moratorium period within which both the landlord and the tenant can sit down to help resolve the difficulties that the epidemic situation has brought about. So it is basically a standstill arrangement, deferring the collection of the rental for 3 months. We are not taking away their right to collect rent. We are not relieving the tenants' obligation to pay rent. But the whole idea is to provide a breathing space and an opportunity for the landlord and the tenant to find out mutually acceptable solutions. And we have also made arrangements with the banks to accommodate in the event that because of the deferral of the rental collection, the landlord may have difficulty in meeting their loan repayment schedules. The banks will also provide moratorium period.
Right. FS, the Mrs. Andy Jie, the chairman of the Retail Management Association, has always said rent is a major factor in running the business, especially at this difficult time. And she has openly said that she has welcomed that. But to be on the other side, the rent moratorium was implemented previously in other countries, and they're accompanied by the landlords being able to defer their mortgage payments to the bank. Are you going to include this as well, to be fair on both sides?
Well, as I said, we have talked to the Hong Kong Association of Banks, and we are going to include in the legislation that lenders will offer moratorium period likewise to the landlord.
Okay, let's take a break and don't go away. Welcome back. We have been talking to Mr. Paul Chan about whether Hong Kong can afford another budget deficit and how the anti-pandemic spending can make a difference. So, Paul, we had a good chat on some of your work, especially on the consumption voucher and the rent moratorium. Let's move on to another section of your budget that you talk about. You have allocated $16 billion to make Hong Kong to be an international IT hub. And this is in line with the role that was given in the 14th five-year national plan of our nation. You are hoping to nurture more startups and attract more talent. But realistically, when do you think this can happen? Especially how can you attract a biotech investor when they probably can't even come to Hong Kong for several more months this year?
Well, the epidemic situation is short-term. We are very confident that we will be able to overcome this shortly. And, for this term of government, we have spent and committed over 130 billion in terms of investment in innovation and technology. And the ecosystem for I&T is growing. And we have been observing a lot more young people going to university to study science, engineering, and the entry qualification has been increasing. Well, in the budget, we set aside a very substantial amount of money to assist our I&T development on multiple fronts, including setting up a strategic tech fund to assist not just startups, but unicorns. So that on the one hand, we keep these companies in Hong Kong, help them grow, and also the people of Hong Kong through this strategic fund can benefit from their growth. And this fund can also be used to attract foreign research companies and other tech companies to come to Hong Kong by investing into them, getting a seat on their board, and knowing more the development and direction of that particular sector. That would also be very important in formulating our I&T policies in those particular respects.
Yeah, Paul, one very specific question from one of the viewers. They were saying that while you have done, putting money in the I&T, but how about not enough having put in doing the contact tracing abilities? How do you reply to that? They said there's not enough budget on that.
Oh, not at all. In terms of supporting the epidemic fight, we have put all resources required. I think earlier on, the difficulty in terms of tracing is limited by other constraints, like whether we have enough capacity in terms of the related talent.
Yes. So, Paul, let's move on to another question that I asked your colleague Patrick Nip last week, that with such stringent travel restrictions in place, one of the concerns is that some of our expatriates are leaving Hong Kong, because we have some figures from a relocation firm saying that the ones coming in and going out is 1, 2, 3. So 3 people is moving out while 1 is coming back. So that is kind of I mean, not saying that we must have expatriates, but it does having some hardship in finding talent from overseas. So even recently, the American Chamber of President has left our city. So can we still maintain our status as the top 3 international financial center in your view, although it's a short-term pandemic?
Well, we are leading international financial center, no doubt about it. The epidemic situation is short-term. This challenge, we have to fight it together. I'm keenly aware of the situation, the difficulties facing expatriates and their families. But at the end of the day, I think it is important for us to put this epidemic situation quickly under control and to be able to revive our quarantine-free traveling with the mainland first, and then gradually with the international community when we are ready in terms of increasing our vaccination rates, in terms of acquiring the drugs for the treatment of COVID. So to me, the business opportunity of Hong Kong, particularly in the context of the GBA and the mainland, is very promising. And this will remain to be very attractive to foreign companies and expatriates.
Right. Let me quote from one recent survey whereby 48% of the respondents consider Hong Kong to be still competitive as a global hub, and 80% said Singapore was the biggest threat to the city because of the strategic location and the pro-business approach. However, there was one disturbing comment that I felt, was that some felt that the Hong Kong government didn't really care if they have left. So what is the government position on the expatriates?
Well, Hong Kong is an international city. We welcome people from all over the world to come here, to do business, to share our prosperity, and to work together to bring Hong Kong to another level, no matter it is in financial services or innovation and technology or arts and culture. The COVID-19 situation is short-term. We will be able to overcome this. And Hong Kong, under the one country, two system arrangement, remain a free market, a free city, and welcome all to come to work with us, to share the prosperity with us.
Yeah, and following on from the last question, while the recent talent flight may arguably provide some upward mobility of our local talents, do you think our existing talent in our education system to meet up for the increasing demand trend for internationally, while Hong Kong has to be an important financial hub?
Well, we have observed blank time back in the lead up to 1997. Hong Kong people are very smart and agile. I think on the one hand, we will continue to improve, continue to educate ourselves in terms of better equip ourselves for various challenges and career opportunities. I have every confidence in the people of Hong Kong.
Right. So, Paul, with the term we always use is a geopolitical tension now, speaking of global economy and with the uncertainties of the current Hong Kong COVID, which hopefully will end in a few months' time, as you just said. How confident are you with the Hong Kong achieving your forecast of 2.2 to 3.5% GDP growth, bearing in mind this is quite a wide range, and you have a history of several revisions of forecasts in recent years?
You know, Hong Kong is a small, open economy. We have to face challenges both domestically and externally. Our experience last year, as you may have observed, when the epidemic situation is under control and people come out to spend money, economic activities to be resumed, the recovery can be very fast. And last year, we were not able to reopen the border with the mainland on quarantine-free basis. We still registered a growth of 6.4%. And this year, with concerted effort, we are confident that on the epidemic front, we will move fast, put it under control, give us the opportunity and prepare us for revival of traveling with the mainland. And with the consumption voucher to be launched in September, domestically, we have the economic engine to grow faster. And externally, the US and Europe, although they are facing inflation challenge, but at the same time, the forecast is that they will remain on the growth track. And the mainland is still on very strong growth. Mm-hmm. So external environment, barring unforeseen circumstances, is also favorable. That's why we put up this GDP growth range. We think this is achievable.
Right, okay. So FS, you also have lifted some of the mortgage requirement. I mean, people will be able to afford the same amount of property with a lesser deposit, which, let me tell you, a lot of viewers have expressed to me that they welcome that. However, is this against the government intention to keep the affordability to a more reasonable level? Would it fuel the property prices to go up again further?
Well, this relaxation in mortgage insurance is to provide people with more option, so that for those who can afford the monthly mortgage repayment but cannot afford the substantial down payment, would be better able if they want to acquire a flat for their own use.
Right. So you don't think it will push up the price?
I don't think this would have any significant impact on the property price, given, number one, the property market at the moment is quite soft.
Right.
The interest rate is expected to be going up. People are very cautious. The completion in the coming 5 years is about 19,000, in the order of 19,000 units a year, which is 14% higher than the previous 5 years average.
Right.
And the first-hand supply in the coming 3 to 4 years is about 98,000, which is the highest in recent years. So given all this situation and taking stock of our experience in the previous relaxation back in 2019, we do think that this is the right moment to relax a little bit so that people know of the options available to them, but at the same time can take their time in terms of
Let me ask you
whether to buy or not.
A very short question. You mentioned about the government having the expansionary fiscal measures. That's quite different to the prudent approach that we had. Are you saying that the multiplier effect of our economy from the private sector has gone down drastically? Yes or no?
Well, actually, as you can observe, at the moment, the economic situation is very worrying. Okay. So I think we need to provide the support and inspire the confidence.
Right. Good luck to your work. And thank you, Financial Secretary Paul Chan, for sharing with us your rationale behind the budget. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and good night.